All right, Nick, let's talk about the Florida Gators. I think the Gators have been doing a phenomenal job capitalizing on the end of a strong season last year, moving it into the offseason, moving in 2025 and 2026 class, really doing a great job. But when you break down what they've been doing, I think there's one key point here, one key factor as to why they've been getting better and why they're going to start competing with other teams in the state of Florida, with other teams in the Southeastern Conference to be a really strong team here. I think Florida fans are going to love all of this. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Gators doing a lot of good stuff, but one thing that they had to start doing, and this is very difficult to do because of how really, a hotspot the state of Florida is as a whole in the recruiting bed. They had to start dominating. They had to start getting more and more players out of the state of Florida. I know it sounds crazy. There's a lot of competition there, and then really they hadn't been focusing on the state too much before. But now for Florida, I think things are changing. Let's pull up our first graph here, and we can really dive into what exactly is going on for the Gators. So up here first, we're seeing percentage of recruits from the state of Florida by year for the Gators. And we look, there's 3 years on here. 2024, you can see they're right at like 40% as far as the amount of percentage of their recruits out of the state of Florida here, which not great. You really want to have more guys. I think you see some of the top teams. You go look at Ohio State, they're going to have majority of their recruits out of the state of Ohio. You go look at Georgia, another top team, they're going to have majority of their recruits out of the state of Georgia. Just plain and simple, that's what the best teams are doing. You then go look in 2025, a little bit of an uptick. Not too much, but 44.4% guys out of the state of Florida in that 2025 class. But now we're starting to see 2026 class, the class that most correlates with the end of last season. What are they able to do? Boom, already skyrocketing up 60% of their players out of the state of Florida here. I think they're really starting to focus more on the state of Florida, which I think is a key. Focusing on your state, dominating your state first in recruiting is something we talk about on this channel all the time. To be a good team, you have to dominate your state first, then you go regionally, then you go nationally. That's how it works, especially when you've been shaky before. And quite frankly, Billy Napier in Florida have been a little shaky before. Like I alluded to, Ohio State, that's what they do. They won a national championship. Georgia, that's what they do. They've been dominating. You look at Alabama, another great recruiting team, always dominating the state of Alabama first. Florida had to get back to dominating the state of Florida and focusing on it and really making an effort to get most of their guys out of there. And we're seeing 2026 they have. And like I said, it's a tough state to beat because there's a lot of great teams in the state of Florida. But I think when Florida has been zigging, everyone else is zagging, and that's in a bad direction as far as what have other teams been doing in the state of Florida. And we'll bring up our second chart here showing how the other top teams in the state of Florida look compared to the Gators as far as the percentage of their recruits coming out of the state of Florida. And we have Miami in green, Florida State in red here, just showing exactly what they have done as well out of the state of Florida. Traditionally, these are two teams that have been doing really, really great stuff, like in the 60s, high 50 percentile of their class out of the state of Florida. You look at Miami last year, 2025, when they had such a great year, 65% of guys coming out of 2024 class into 2025 already coming from the state of Florida. But now we're looking to the out years. We're looking 2026. They kind of dropped off a little bit. Florida has now passed them. These are teams that are in the low 50 percentile. They're going in a downward trend as far as what they're doing in the state of Florida. So I think Florida, with this momentum, a strong season in last year, they're continuing in the state of Florida to hit it hard, and they're already starting to dominate. I think this is a good sign for the Gators going forward that, hey, they're focusing on Florida. They may not be the best team in Florida quite yet. I think Miami's going to be a tough team. I think they're really close, though. I think it would be neck and neck if they were to square up. But I think there's a good trend here for the Gators as far as what they're looking to do in this 2026 class. And if they keep it up, this is how they're going to start to contend for the state of Florida. This is how they're going to start to contend to be SEC champs and then inevitably become to college football playoff contenders. I think they're on the right track, and I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here for the Gators. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick, but before we get to you, Florida fans, in the comment section below. Let us know right now. There's some great recruits out there already in the state of Florida for the 2026 class that are floating around. Maybe some guys that are, projected to commit to Florida. Maybe some guys that are projected to commit to other schools. What recruits are you looking at in the state of Florida right now that you hope come to the state of Florida for this 2026 class? There's a lot of great guys out there. Florida has a ton of talent, but let us know in the comment section below what Florida recruits are you hoping that the Gators get to score. But nonetheless, Nick, enough from me. What are your thoughts on everything going here with the Florida Gators?
So there's a lot to unpack. First and foremost, when you consider, and you brought this up, of course, and everyone understands this, just the level and volume of talent that's in the state of Florida, winning and doing better in Florida is critical for the Gators. But I like how the graph highlighted that Florida's increase is coinciding with the Florida State and Miami decrease, right? We live in a zero-sum recruiting environment. If I get a four-star recruit, you don't get them, right? If I get a five-star recruit, you don't get them. And when you're battling for top talent in the state of Florida, it's not just helping you, it's hurting your opponents. And there can be a compounding effect here. It can work both ways, but it can certainly work positively. If you start getting all the 4- and 5-star recruits in your state, the other 4- and 5-star recruits that played with and against those guys in high school are going to be like, okay, all the good players are going to Florida. I want to go to Florida, right? It becomes this whole concept that compounds on itself, and you build a lot of momentum, and then you get recruiting off the charts, and then you really, really accelerate. This is what Saban did at Alabama when he was starting winning the state of Alabama in just huge numbers when he took over and got that Crimson Tide dynasty running. Florida, not quite there yet, but the trend is definitely heading in that kind of direction, which is obviously a good sign for the Gators. But let's take a step back and remember, a lot of people, when they look at Billy Napier, like, look, it hasn't been good in terms of wins and losses. Trend was fine the way they finished the season, but what can Napier bring to this program to accelerate to the next level? But I think we all have to step back and realize these things take time, right? These massive changes, especially considering the Florida program wasn't exactly just dominating before Napier showed up, to understand that it's not an overnight deal. If you look at Napier's career, he really has no connections to the state of Florida, right? I think he was born in Tennessee, went to Furman in upstate South Carolina, got his coaching starting at Clemson, was at the University of Louisiana before he came to Florida, right? This is not a guy who is just really deeply embroiled in Central Florida or South Florida or Panhandle or North Florida when it comes to recruiting. His network of high school coaches and boots on the ground guys just isn't there because he's new to the state, right? Nothing against him. It's just going to take time. It's not something where you can just show up and develop that level of recruiting. People look at Urban Meyer's success at Florida, and one of the things they always forget was how good, this is a name a lot of Florida fans probably remember, Ron Zook was at being a recruiter. The talent with the Gators' first national title team under Meyer was largely found because of Zook's recruiting prowess, right? So when we look at Urban Meyer and say, why can't we replicate that? It was kind of a weird situation where Meyer just maximized the incredible amount of talent Florida had because Zook was such a good recruiter, but to be totally fair, not to be too negative on him, but not nearly a good on-field coach and developer. Urban Meyer, great on-field coach, great developer, took that talent, took it to a national title, paired it with some good recruiting, and then they, of course, had a number of really good years on the other side of it. I think right now with Florida, with Napier, they're figuring it out in terms of recruiting. They're figuring out, okay, who's our network? Who's the kind of guy we can communicate and work with to win kids in South Florida, Central Florida, Jacksonville area, Panhandle, Tallahassee, Pensacola, whatever it may be. How can we find connections? How we get in with these kids and get this momentum going? Because if you look at Miami, they've obviously been there a number of years now with their staff and Mario Cristobal. Mike Norvell, a number of years as well. They've had some really nice seasons. Obviously, Florida State was a disaster last season, but they've had a few good seasons mixed in there as well. So it's going to take time for Napier to get up to their level. And you can see based on the graph, the trend is 100% in Florida's favor right now. They just have to continue building on that success, continue working on that network, and continuing to grind. And it's going to work, folks. It takes time. I understand we live in just an instant results kind of world with everything with social media, AI, just a crazy environment we live in where we expect coaches to come in season one, day one, and, double your win total. And by season two, you won a national title, right? That's what we expect. The reality is it takes a lot longer than that, especially when you're bringing a coach who's out of the area, who's out of the region, who just doesn't necessarily have the connections and the knowledge to win at the recruiting level. He's getting there, right? We've seen the improvement. We're seeing it in real time. We're also seeing the results on the field. There has to be a big step forward in 2025 when it comes to games on Saturdays. We all understand that. We all agree that. We all know that. But I think when it comes to recruiting, we're starting to see the results. It takes time to work this out, guys. It's not something that can happen overnight. I think we're seeing obviously improvement. I think we're seeing some taking away recruits, taking away valuable prospects away from in-state rivals, getting some positive compounding effects working in the Gators' favor. And if they can continue that trend paired with some quality results on Saturdays, this Florida Gators team can go back to competing for SEC titles and making runs in the college football playoff. Again, I don't know if they're there yet. We'll see what happens this season, but it's undeniable. Every single report, every single piece of data very clearly indicates the Gators under Napier, at least from a recruiting and talent perspective, are trending in the right direction.
Yeah, Nick, and I think you bring up some good points. And one point I want to key on is you talk about what Florida State is able to do. They had a great season 2 seasons ago, and we look at that, we see what was happening at the end of that year. That was they were at their highest point as far as their percentage of players from the state of Florida. Obviously, we all can agree they took a pretty big nosedive, and things kind of you can't really tank that hard. So things really have fallen off for them in that aspect. I think they're kind of trying to circle the wagons, get the ship back in the right direction. But we can see, like I said, recruiting classes are kind of 2 years out. When you finish the 2024 season, the 2025 class is, all but buttoned up. There's probably a few good players that you can add to it through that, but you did a majority of your recruiting, a majority of the work already on that class. So you're looking for what you did in 2024, to me personally, really to affect the 2026 class, 2 years out there. And really, how is that going to affect as far as what this team's doing? And we already see the trend for Florida. They're doing strong work. They're continuing that trend, saying, hey, strong year. We're affecting 2026. It's already off to a really great start. They need to continue it. I think there's no reason why they should not be even better. I think we're going to be very surprised with a full year of this new quarterback, DJ Lagway, coming in for a full season out Florida next year. Going to make a tremendous difference. People are going to be very surprised at Florida getting off to a great start. So I think overall we're seeing good stuff. I think the trend should continue. I think they should get significantly better this coming year. And I think we're going to see even better recruiting numbers. I'm excited to see how this trend affects their 2027 class as well.